Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're broadcasting today from the slopes of Gombe Mountain, listening to the echoes of Buhera, the whispers of the village.
That's right. And today we're delving into something quite close to home here, within Shona culture.
We are. It's the whole question around marrying someone who already has a child. Mukadzi at Mwana, as we say.
This is actually our third deep dive exploring these themes. And this topic, well, it really bridges tradition and, modern life, modern relationships.
Absolutely. So the core question we're looking at is marrying a woman with a child viewed as, well, taboo? Or is it seen perhaps more as an act of love, maybe even courage?
That's the crux of it. It's complex.
So maybe let's start by looking back. What was the historical perspective in traditional Shona society? How was the situation generally viewed?
Well, traditionally, if a man was considering this, the expectation was quite high. He needed to show real understanding, a strong sense of responsibility.
Responsibility being key.
Definitely. And the elders, they played a crucial role. They wouldn't just let it happen without discussion. A central question they'd pose, almost invariably, was, will you take this child as your own?
Wow. That's direct. Will you take the child as your own? That sets a really high bar from the outset, doesn't it?
It really does. And it wasn't just, asking politely. It had real weight, real significance.
So if the man said yes, if he agreed to that, what happened next? Were there specific customs?
Yes. If he affirmed that commitment, there was often a ritual called Mwana. This was important. It was about formally, spiritually welcoming the child into his family, into his lineage.
Ah, okay. So Mwana. It wasn't just saying the words, it was a symbolic act.
Exactly, symbolic integration. It went beyond just the social aspect of, forming a new household.
Right. There's a spiritual dimension to bringing the child fully into the family fold. What if? What if things weren't handled properly? That necessary respect.
This is where you get into some really deep-rooted beliefs. If the situation wasn't handled respectfully, especially towards the child, their background, their existing ties, there was a real fear of causing ancestral displeasure.
Ancestral displeasure? You mean Ngozi?
Precisely, Ngozi, often understood as avenging spirits. This belief really highlights how important maintaining harmony was harmony within the whole extended family, the living and the ancestors.
So it wasn't just superstition, it was tied into the well-being of the living.
Absolutely. It reflected this core belief that respect for the ancestors and for proper family structures was essential. Disrupting that without the right acknowledgments, well, could have serious spiritual consequences.
That's profound. And what about the more practical side of things, like lobola, the bride price? How did that fit in when the woman already had a child?
The lobola discussions, they could get quite nuanced. It wasn't like there was a fixed discount or anything. But the fact that there was already a child, that would definitely be part of the conversation.
So, part of the negotiation?
Yes. The families would discuss how the responsibilities for that child, maybe contributions already made, would be factored into the final agreement. It reflected the reality of the family structure as it was.
Makes sense. It wouldn't be just a standard calculation. You also touched on lineage earlier, the importance of purity of lineage and tradition. How did marrying a woman with a child intersect with those beliefs?
Yeah, that was a significant factor traditionally. Maintaining a clear lineage was important for things like inheritance, social standing, the continuation of the man's direct ancestral line.
So bringing in a child from outside that bloodline could raise concerns.
It could, yes. Concerns about who inherits property, the family name. These weren't just abstract ideas. They had real social, even economic implications for the family's future.
Okay, so we see those potential hurdles, those traditional concerns. But then there's the other side, the value of Ubuntu, which is so central in Shona culture. How does that shape the perspective?
Right, Ubuntu, that fundamental sense of shared humanity. It offers a completely different and I think very important lens. In this context, a man choosing to take in and care for a child not biologically his, that could be seen as a deeply humane act.
Like restoring something.
Exactly. Potentially restoring what was broken, perhaps in a previous family situation. Ubuntu isn't just about being nice. It's about community well-being, about bringing people back into the fold, supporting each other.
So accepting a single mother and her child could be seen as upholding that core value.
Very much so. It could restore dignity to the mother, who might otherwise face stigma or hardship. By stepping up, the man demonstrates his humanity, his commitment to Ubuntu.
So rather than being seen negatively because of lineage, it could actually be viewed as, well, noble, compassionate.
Precisely. An honorable act within the community's value system.
And thinking about the child, What were the positive outcomes seen from a man taking on that fatherly role, even without the biological connection?
Well, obviously, providing a father figure is huge. Offering that emotional support, guidance, protection, it gives the child a stronger sense of belonging, stability within a family unit.
And would the wider community recognize this? Would they value that kind of commitment?
Oh, absolutely. There was definitely potential for the man to receive blessings, positive regard from the community for showing that level of care and responsibility.
Were there stories of this working out well?
Yes, certainly. Stories of successful blended families where a man fully embraced a woman and her child, they definitely exist within Shona communities. They served as examples, really, showing that these unions could thrive.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how these different perspectives, the concerns about lineage, the emphasis on Ubuntu, exist together within the culture.
It really is. Complex, but very human.
Now, maybe we could broaden out a little. How do other cultures approach this? Are there similar ideas elsewhere or stark contrasts?
It's interesting to compare. You look at, say, Zulu culture, and you see some parallels. If a man fully marries a woman with a child, there's often a similar expectation that he'll support that child.
Okay, so a comparable sense of responsibility there. What about Western cultures? Blended families are pretty common there now.
Yeah, in many Western societies, the focus often shifts more towards the relationship between the adults, their happiness, their compatibility. Of course, the child's well-being is important, but it's often framed as building a new family unit based on the couple's commitment.
And the legal side might focus more on parental rights and responsibilities, regardless of biology.
Exactly. Legal frameworks often step in to define those roles within the blended family.
What about another perspective, maybe Islamic tradition?
In Islam, it's also interesting. If a man marries a woman with a child, he generally takes on a significant role as a guardian, responsible for the child's welfare and upbringing.
But the lineage might be different.
Yes. Typically, the child's legal and religious lineage stays with the biological father. So that highlights a different understanding of family roles and inheritance compared to, say, the traditional Shona focus.
It really shows the diversity, doesn't it? How family, responsibility, lineage are understood so differently across the world.
Absolutely. Acceptance levels vary, the rituals vary, and it's key to distinguish between, spiritual fatherhood or ancestral connection versus legal or biological ties. They aren't the same thing in every culture.
And with things changing, like more people living in cities, urbanization, how might that be affecting these traditional views back here in places like Buhera?
That's a really important point. Urbanization definitely brings exposure to different lifestyles, different ideas. It can challenge or reshape traditional norms. So yeah, we might be seeing a wider range of attitudes emerging now.
Okay, let's bring it back then, right back here to Buhera, to the village. If we were listening to the whispers today, what kinds of voices, what opinions might we hear on this?
You'd likely hear a real mix. You might hear, say, a young man, perhaps influenced by modern ideas, saying, look, I love her. The child is part of her. I'm marrying her. Simple as that. Love being the primary driver.
Right, a very personal, maybe contemporary view. But what about the elders, those holding on to tradition?
Well, you might hear an elder woman expressing some caution, maybe asking, have the ancestors been consulted? Have we really thought about the lineage implications? Reflecting that deep, abiding respect for tradition and ancestral guidance.
So that tension is still there.
It is. But hopefully you'd also hear the positive stories, reflecting that Ubuntu spirit we talked about.
Like what kind of story?
Maybe a middle-aged woman sharing her own experience. Perhaps she was a single mother, and her husband accepted both her and her child wholeheartedly. She might talk about the happy family they've built, showing it can work beautifully.
Well, stories are important too.
Incredibly important. They show the potential for love, acceptance, and successful blending.
So when we pull all of this together, the tradition, the Ubuntu, the comparisons, the voices from the community, what's the takeaway? What's the verdict, if you can even call it that, for someone considering this path within Shona culture today?
Well, it's definitely not a simple yes or no, but I think it boils down to some core things. First, a really deep sense of responsibility. Are you genuinely willing to embrace both the woman and the child fully?
That question again.
That question. Then honesty. Open communication with everyone involved, the woman, her family, your family, and yes, considering the ancestors if tradition dictates that for you. And finally, understanding. Really understanding the cultural weight, the nuances, the tradition surrounding it.
So it's not about throwing tradition away, but navigating it with awareness, respect.
Exactly that. navigated with respect for the woman, for the child, and yes, for the traditions and values of the community. It's about making a choice with your eyes open and your heart willing, understanding the challenges, but also the potential rewards.
As we wrap up this deep dive, thinking about Gombe Mountain behind us, the Save River flowing nearby, it really feels like these personal choices, like marrying someone with a child, they don't happen in isolation, do they? They send ripples through the whole village.
It's a perfect way to put it. Every decision, especially about family, resonates. It echoes within our community, within our shared world here in Buhera.
This has been incredibly insightful, really digging into a sensitive but vital part of Shona culture. Thank you for guiding us through it.
My pleasure. It's an important conversation to have.
And for you listening, we hope this gives you food for thought. Consider these whispers from Buhera, the values of responsibility, love, acceptance, tradition, how they play out in your own life, your own community.
Indeed. What are your thoughts? It's worth reflecting on these different perspectives.
From the heart of Buhera, carried on the whispers of the village from Gombe Mountain. Until our next deep dive, remember to listen to the whispers. They carry our wisdom.